Hello everybody. Welcome to another edition of the Poetry of Painting. So it's actually on the summer solstice today, which congratulations to all the druids out there. If you've seen the sunrise, and especially if you've seen it rise at somewhere like Stonehenge, which must be quite amazing to be there and see that. I'd love to do that one day, but I think the chances of that would be quite slim. I think there's very restricted numbers allowed in, and I just think it'd be wonderful. Not that I'm a druid, but I just think it's a fantastic thing, the way it all lines up on the solstice. So anyway, happy summer solstice to everybody, our longest day in the Northern Hemisphere. And on this longest day, we're going to invite back to the show someone who we've missed because he's been away for a little while, and that's Markey Mark Symmonds. So let me just bring Markey onto the screen. Hi, Markey Mark.
How are you? Hi.
How are you doing? You okay?
Yeah, not so bad. Not so bad.
Good,
bearing up.
Good.
So,
good. A bit cooler today as well, isn't it?
Day? Yeah, longest day today. And it doesn't seem possible, does it, that we're not even the end of June and we're already starting, the days are getting shorter.
Absolutely.
That just sounds really weird. And we're not even really into summer yet, are we?
No, not really, no.
Yeah.
Oh, Chris says, hi Fiona, nice to be with you on the longest day of the year. Sounds like a title for a film. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Good title. But mind you, yesterday morning when I got up, we'd been having thunderstorms, and it seemed like the days had really closed in again because it was so dark yesterday morning with the heavy clouds, the thunder was going, the light, and it was absolutely torrential rain. Luckily, it stopped before I had to go out, which was a blessing. But
I'm really disappointed with the thunderstorms. I really am, because we've had one or two here. We've had some torrential rain, but the thunderstorms are normally a couple of flashes, a bit of rumble of thunder, and they're gone. And I want a really good storm, let's have a couple of hours of it, and some ball lightning, and something really spectacular. But it's not.
Been here yesterday morning. It was a good one. It was a good one.
Yeah, no, the best it did yesterday here was rained, I think. There was an odd bit rumbling around, but nothing spectacular. But I think one of the things I always remember was being over at California Cliffs in Norfolk, and standing like an idiot standing on the cliffs watching the lightning break across the water. And we thought we would be the only two silly devils doing it, and people were coming from miles around in their cars, pulling up and standing watching the lightning breaking across the water. It was spectacular.
Yeah, it sounds fantastic, but you are sort of putting yourself out there as a lightning conductor, basically, aren't you?
You are,
yeah.
Yeah.
Not too good for the body to conduct all the lightning through, but
that's right.
You survived it, so that was good. And luckily we are getting a bit more rain at the moment for the gardens. Everything's so dry, and the reservoirs and the rivers are drying up, and and that means wildlife's going to suffer, and I find that very sad. And a lot of it's just because we've got so many people using so much water now, and it's more than the land can take. I was reading yesterday about the Colorado River, one of the longest rivers in North America. I'm not sure if it might be the longest in North America, and how much the different states as well. It doesn't even go through some of these states, and they siphon water off it, and the river is drying up. And they're now talking about managing it more, because if you allow the rivers to more manage themselves and create wetlands and things, it stores the water in these wetlands, and then when it's needed, it starts draining out again.
Well, the interesting thing about that is that's actually facilitating in this country the reintroduction of beavers.
Absolutely.
In some areas. Now they've already done it in Scotland, where they've got them managed, but they're going to start doing it in like Norfolk and that, because the beavers will make runoff trails and allow the water to run off, and it actually stops it flooding the farmland, but it keeps enough moisture. And they reckon as long as you control the beaver population, and with the dams and all that lot, it actually manages the countryside really well. So there is a positive in global warming, in that we're seeing something that we got rid of because we didn't really understand what they did, is now coming back. And I think that'll be really good to see wild beavers and things like that on the shores.
It's the same in America as well, because they were hunted almost to extinction, you know, and now they're trying to bring them back. So there is a silver lining to that. But, you know, it's just a horrendous story when you think about it, and how we've funded the planet. But Chris says he knows California cliffs, used to go there with his parents when he was on holidays in Norfolk. And the Missouri River is the longest one in North America. I thought I might be wrong on that, but Colorado is a long river.
I know what you mean about Colorado. They had, I think it was that one, they had a documentary on, and the woman was walking across the stones, and there was an area where it's supposed to be stepping stones, and it's just dry rock. You know, absolutely incredible. But also over here, when you think the amount of building that we're doing in this country, that's going to affect the runoff. And
you just broke up a little bit there, Mark.
Sorry. The amount of building that we're doing in this country is going to affect things like wetlands and the areas we've got to drain water. You know, and I mean, we live in an area where consistently there's actually a holiday site not far down from us that consistently gets flooded, because when they have flooding further up the River Nen, they open the floodgates and it comes down and it floods the campsite. So then they have to evacuate the campsite for 3 or 4 days, and people can't go in there. And some people actually live on there; that's their home as well. So you know, for 3-4 years running, these people were evacuated every year. You know, and their stuff was almost destroyed. You know, they'd have stuff stored under caravans and things, and it was destroyed, and it's ridiculous.
Well, as well, so much of the building work, you know, they put down tarmac and everything, and the water just runs straight off and causes flooding, instead of soaking into the land and being released gradually and keeping the water tables up. And, you know, anyway, I think...
Did you see the thing with Jay Blades last night about the East End of London? And he went to, I think it was Ashton Sewerage Works, and it's a building, and you go inside, and it's this beautifully ornate paintings and gold leaf and all, almost like a mosque inside, right? And that was actually a storage works, and they did that to prove that when they put the guy who invented the massive plan for a massive sewage network under London, he did it to prove that you could actually do it and not know it was there.
Oh, right.
Yeah, and you can actually go and look inside this place. It just looks inside. It looks like a mosque or something like that. It's that ornate inside. Unbelievable. You wouldn't believe it's a sewage works.
Wow, fascinating.
Yeah.
Well, even more fascinating, by the way, is first of all, I need to say welcome to everybody watching, whether on live or replay. Thank you very much for watching. Please do join in with comments and things. And now I think we need to get round to a bit of poetry, Markey Mark, because you have once again written one of your beautiful poems for one of my paintings. So
yes,
it's showing in the background here, but I'll just add the painting to the screen. It's actually a very small painting. If I hold it up here, you can see with my hand next to it, it's only 15 centimeters square, the actual painting, which is about 6 inches square. It's a bit bigger with the frame, obviously, about a foot square with the frame. But so it's quite a little gem painted with knives, which has given a lot of lovely texture in it. So, and actually based on a scene that I sketched at Aldborough on the Suffolk coast. So
nice.
There we go. So, Markey Mark, your poem.
Peaceful mooring. Ripples from the peace and tranquility of nature's elixir encircle the red sailboat that bobs gently up and down, rocking like a baby in the arms, rocked in mum's arms, keeping it from harm. up and down, gently sway, creaking of the wood, drying in the sun of midday, never floating away, just moving slightly this way and that, fighting the anchor that keeps pulling it back. Sails were lowered at the lowering of the sun and left to the sea to come what may, the peace of morning among the land and rivers, the flora and the fauna, joining in the course of ripples, fish breaking surface, ripples within ripples, breeze gently kissing the land and water. This is the harmony of peaceful mooring, as though the world is asleep, except for a mild snoring. Thank you.
Oh, lovely. Oh, it's just, yeah, it's just the way, you know, it is with the sails furled down and the, yeah, lovely, really lovely.
When I looked at it, and I felt guilty because actually I took out most of the painting and focused on the boat, and I just focused on laying in the boat and what would it be like laying in the boat, how would it feel, and getting those sounds of that water going plop, 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 plop
against the hull,
and the little fish occasionally going, you know, and the creaking of the wood and just those sorts of things as you're laying there and the weird movements the boat makes as it pulls against the anchor, then it tries to pull it back and things like that. So that's how I wrote that. Was it just imagine laying in the boat? So if essentially that's probably why I've blocked everything else out around. I haven't commented about the reeds and that in the foreground. But I guess if you're looking at the painting, it doesn't need that because you kind of, even though you see the reeds in the foreground, you focus on that boat. So that's how I wrote that one. And I found it very difficult. It was really hard to to get that essence of that movement of the boat with the ripples, but nothing too strenuous for the boat. So you're getting those little tiny movements, that little bit of rocking and things like that. To bring that across was really difficult.
Well, you managed it. You certainly managed it. So, and it really was the day that I sat there and sketched this, and it was so peaceful because it's in the, I guess, an estuary of the river that comes out, you know, it's not actually out on the sea, and it just sitting there with the odd bird calling and, you know, just a very slight breeze. It was a beautiful day, and it was so peaceful, away from traffic and cars and very few people walking around. And the ones that did, you know, when you're out somewhere like that and people walk by and you say, oh, hello, good afternoon, and, you know, just exchange a pleasantry. In a city street, you just walk straight past each other. You wouldn't even acknowledge that there was someone there. But when you're somewhere like that, it somehow makes you more human, I think, because you do just say, oh, hello there, you know, in passing, or lovely day, isn't it? Or, you know, whatever. And
I think that's what makes community, to be honest. You don't have to be in each other's pockets. You don't have to know all your community, but there are certain almost unwritten rules within a community, you know, that you do things like you say hello to somebody when you walk past. I know where I live, one of the things that we value greatly is that at least one of our neighbours is always on the lookout if he sees my wife out and about in a wheelchair, and he always does hello, and he always makes a point of checking if she's all right. And that's just a community thing. And on 2 or 3 occasions when she's broken down, it's been local people who have come up to her and said, "You're right." They've waited with her till I've got there, and stuff like that, you know. And it's been that real, and for an area that the Eastern District of Northampton has got quite a reputation. Some of the estates have got quite a reputation for being quite violent, and a lot of scroats living there. But it is a community, and there's kind of this unwritten rule that you will help someone out. And they do. And that's, you know, that community bit, just knowing that you don't have to speak to people every day, but knowing that when you need somebody, or, you know, when you're a bit down, just somebody saying, "Hello, you're all right. Oh, I haven't seen you for a while. How are you?" Just makes all that difference.
Yes, it does. Because some people live quite solitary lives, and they go out and, you know, people just walk by, and I'm sure they feel sometimes that they hardly exist, you know, and just saying, well, even in shops now, so many of them are you know, self-checkouts. You don't even get to speak to a shop assistant very often. So I'm sure there are a lot of people out there that so miss that. And I think that's one of the bad things about big towns. There's some good points about big towns, although I prefer smaller places. But, you know, a large city can be a very lonely place, whereas a small town or village or an area, like, you know, if you've got an area that you're living in there, it can be a much more friendly place because people feel they belong and feel that you belong as well, you know. So
that's right. Well, I remember my granddad living in Islington in London, and he lived 18 stories up in a 20-story block of flats. And sometimes the only person he would see in a week would be the lady on the checkout at Sainsbury's. And we wanted to bring him down here. He'd had a stroke and that, and he'd recovered really well from it. But we wanted to get him down here, and he decided he was going to take the plunge and move. And we got him. He got a first floor flat in a 2-story block, and he said just the difference of being able to look out of my window. When you looked out of his window in his block of flats, is all you saw was about 30 train tracks and the Arsenal in the distance. And you could only see the corner of the Arsenal, so you couldn't even watch the match. You know, so, but that was your view out the window. But when he moved here, he said just being able to open my window and hear children walking past and families, and you know, and coming out my door and seeing people, he said, just made all the difference. Even if I didn't speak to them, he said it made the difference. You feel like you're alive. You feel you're part of it. He said, whereas before, he said, sometimes I wouldn't even see the neighbours for months because we, you know, would be going out at different times, and you know, they'd be taking the stairs, he'd be taking the lift, and things like that, and so you wouldn't see them. And you know, so you become very isolated, very insular, and just little things he valued, like just being able to walk into town, which kept him fit, but also, you know, he would see people on the way to town, and people would see him and pass the time of day with him and things like that. And he loved all that. He was pleased that he moved down from London. He had lived in London most of his life. And yeah, he loved it when it moving down here. So, I think, but yes, it does make all the difference. Community.
I think during lockdown, I think they were some of the people I felt most sorry for. People in flats like that, especially high-rise ones. You know, at least as you say, if you're a lower level, you can at least see cars drive by, or you know, people weren't supposed to be out much, but if there was someone out, you could see them as opposed to seeing a little speck on the ground from 8 floors up. You know, people like that, stuck in a flat like that with no garden, often no balcony even, and
that's right.
Literally, must have been like a large, comfortable, but prison. You know, not seeing anybody even out the window really. Whereas here, you know, we've got a bit of a garden. It's not massive, but it was plenty. You know, to feel that you could actually get out of the house and sit there and.
It's also a meeting place, wasn't it?
And everything, but
I mean, I know when I used to take my mum to some groceries round, and that's where we exchanged them in the garden. She would stand at the door, I'd put them on a seat in the garden, retreat, and then she'd come out and get them. You know what I mean? So even your garden was like your sanctuary for having your groceries delivered and things like that. But yeah, it must have been horrendous for people in those sort of blocks. And you know, and I know certainly the first phase of lockdown, I was okay. The second phase really hit me. I really got very down in it. I don't know why. Because as I say, the first phase just didn't bother me. Bearing in mind we're a generation of people that have lived through power cuts and caused by strikes and things like that, where we haven't had food on the shelves and things like that. There's a whole generation that never experienced that. My daughter went, "Well, what happens if the lights go out?" Well, we'll get candles out. Oh, right. Well, what if we haven't got food on the shops? Well, the government will provide food. Don't worry about that. That's what they're there for. They will provide you with something. It might not be luxury, but you will have food, and things like that. But there's a whole generation that had never experienced anything like this, never experienced food shortage, had never experienced being cooped up and not being able to go out, not having light on or things like that. And you just start to think, well, God, how different life is in 20, 30 years, compared with what it was when I was a kid, when, I lived in a mining town for a while, and, the times my mum went up the shop and there was no bread because it wasn't getting through because they were on 3-day week or,
very different times, very different.
But
I think, we're so lucky now.
What we've had to get through.
I mean, even during lockdown, there was still food available. It may not have been what you wanted, but there was still food, and in the shops, and you had to queue to go in the shop, but you still had shop. When you see some of these programs about, places in other parts of the world, they have that situation in their shops, and worse a lot of the time. We just had it for a short while.
£20 for a loaf of bread and things like that.
You didn't realise
what caused our problem was, and most people thought it was the binge buyers had bought 20 loaves of bread and 60 toilet rolls, and it wasn't. It was you and I. It was you and I that had put the extra tin of beans in our basket. Because if you think that a shop knows it shifts in a week 50,000 tins of beans, and suddenly it's got 20,000 customers all getting one more tin of beans. That's 20,000 more tins. That's gone off that shelf a lot quicker. And it can't replace them quick enough. So actually, it wasn't the binge buyers who were buying 30 packs of toilet rolls that caused the problem. It was Joe Public, who quite rightly went, "Oh, we'll just have one extra." We'll just have one extra of them. But actually, if you get 50,000 people have one extra, that's 50,000 units you've sold that you can't replace that quickly. And that's what caused a lot of the problem.
Yeah, absolutely. But it did make me realise how much we took for granted before lockdown. You could just go out, go in the shop, get what you wanted. It was there, buy it, come back, get on with what you were doing. And then all of a sudden you had to wait in a very long queue, keeping 6 feet apart. And when you eventually managed to get into the store, you didn't know if they were going to have what you wanted or not. It just made you think, but I used to just drive up, get out the car, go in, get it, come out, go home.
I think in some ways it rebalanced things, because what it suddenly realised, what people suddenly realised is that we were becoming a very greedy society that wanted everything on demand and now. Absolutely. And suddenly we didn't have that. And I think that is one of the good things that came out of it is, you saw the best in people, and there was some absolutely superb acts of kindness and things like that went on, and still are going on. There's a pub locally around our way that is still providing food parcels for people who can't afford to eat. There is still a guy who provides every Sunday in our town centre, and he makes no restriction. He just says, if you need to eat, there's food. And he does. They go with bowl of a big pot of curry and naans and stuff like that. And there's no, oh, you have to be homeless or you have to be this. If you're hungry and you want food, there's food here. We'll serve it. And he's serving 150 people.
Yeah.
In a week.
That's
1
wonderful.
evening.
Wonderful.
Yeah. And I mean, and again, one of the other things that struck me, and it wasn't during the pandemic. It was actually in Paris when they had their running shooters and that going on in Paris, and the local Sikh Gurdwara put out a message saying, if you need shelter, come here. We will keep you safe. We will feed you. Right? Regardless of religion, belief, colour, anything. If you need help, you come here. We will look after you. And that's what people did. And they fed them and they kept them safe and kept them secure. And that is, you know, was a massive thing. And I think the other thing that brought out during the pandemic was this, that those jobs that people had taken for granted for years, that schools push academic brilliance and you've got to get a degree and stuff like that. Well, it wasn't the degree jobs, that were keeping people alive, other than the nursing jobs and that. It was the milkman, the butcher, the delivery driver.
Absolutely.
Yeah. They're the jobs that were keeping this country alive.
Yes.
And I think, you know, we should reflect on that quite heavily. You know, your lorry drivers, you know, your bin men, and that they were the people that were doing, you know, they were keeping this place going. When everybody else was able, or will work from home or will be furloughed, they weren't. They were there plodding away, the backbone of the country. And I think it really brings it home to you that, you know, and all these kids striving for academic brilliance because you have to get into the right universities and things like that. And actually it means nothing.
But that's the whole point about a society. You need all of those different levels, all of those different layers to make the whole thing work. And, you know, I think that was highlighted, as you say, by lockdown. And hopefully people remember that. You know, I mean, you can't just have all the chiefs with no Indians.
Right.
It just doesn't work. You can't have all Indians without some chiefs either, because you need someone to make sure everything runs smoothly. But, you know, you start at the bottom level, as people would call it, of people that do the cleaning. You know, if you don't have your buildings clean, they're going to end up pretty nasty pretty quickly. So those people are also very, very important.
They're weight in gold.
Yeah, the people up the chain, as it were. You know, they're all important, each in their own way. So
I'm not a religious person, but there was something I read, and you sometimes see it on T-shirts, and it said, when he asked his God, "You walked beside me, but where were your footprints?" And he said, "Well, when it got difficult, I carried you."
Yeah.
And I think that's what went on. When it got difficult, those people that could carry.
Yes. Yeah. Tried to help the others as well. Yeah. Well, do you know what, Marky Mark? We are getting towards the end of our time. We're not quite there yet, but it just goes by in a flash. So we've talked about beavers and rivers and goodness knows what tonight, which has been fascinating, and heard a wonderful poem. Thank you very, very much for that. So if you just very quickly, have you got any events coming up, or are you still just taking a little break from that at the moment?
No, I actually did an open mic last week. A friend of mine's working in a pub, and they're doing a proper open mic where it's music and poetry, and anybody can get up and do anything. So I did that.
Good.
I did a set there, and we've got Ketfest coming up in, I think it's about July the 15th, something like that, in Kettering. So I shall go down there with the family and with the Kettlebells weaving words groups, and do some poetry there.
Lovely.
And we might even do some bucket drumming as well, which was fun last year. Bucket drumming, that was brilliant. So,
well, I hope that all goes really, really well for you. Enjoy it, have fun with the family as well, and look forward to having you back on the show again very soon.
Thank you. I look forward to being back.
Thanks for being on, and thank you everyone for watching, and look forward to seeing everyone next week. Take care, everyone. Have a happy summer solstice as well.
Bye.
Cheers. Bye.